Let's welcome in our national college football writer, Brandon Marcello, to walk through the latest happenings in the coaching carousel. And Brandon, we thought it was going to be a pretty quiet cycle until Bill Belichick and his 6 Super Bowl rings decided to take the job at North Carolina. And the thought process is that he's going to bring his NFL style to college football. But in your opinion, how does his NFL experience translate to college football here in 2024?
I think the biggest thing for him is just that he's obviously a big name. That's going to attract people from the transfer portal and also on the recruiting trail. And when you have a front office guy like Michael Lombardi, who's handled these situations previously in the NFL, it makes it so much maybe easier for a coach to transition to college football, which is becoming more like the NFL model now. My question is that Bill Belichick mentioned in his press conference that he's not going to go hire or steal away assistant coaches that are currently preparing for bowl games, which, by the way, you got to do that to build a staff unless he's bringing in some NFL guys potentially. I don't know, but the transfer portal is wide open. It's spinning crazily. He's got to rebuild that roster. So I wonder kind of what their plan is with the portal here the next few weeks, if he is indeed not going to go, quote unquote, steal coaches from other teams. So that's something to watch in the interim. Long term, of course, how does he build this staff? What kind of offense is he going to implement? What kind of defense is he going to implement? Is he going to hire his son, Stephen Belichick, the defensive coordinator at Washington, as many assume right now? And of course, what does his front office look like? Everybody in college football on every campus is wondering that about their own teams, but are they going to do anything different there at North Carolina? Is it going to be strictly like an NFL type front office, or is he going to do some type of hybrid that we're seeing across college football right now? It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I understand that the college game is becoming more like the NFL, and it's pretty easy to see what the sell is from Bill Belichick to players is, I will get you there. But Brandon, what about the 98% of his players that don't have an NFL future? How is he equipped to maybe handle the guys that are just playing college football and maybe even aren't earning NIL money?
It's a great question, and one that he's going to have to figure out on the fly himself. You know, he faced that question a little bit in his press conference where he was asked about coaching younger kids. And for that matter, it goes along with the lines of a lot of these kids are going to do something other than football in their careers. And he said, well, I've coached my son's teams growing up. I've been always obviously very fond of college football. But to say all that, when he was hanging around college football with his dad, one, he was a kid at the time. And two, college football was a lot different 50 years ago when he was around it, hanging around and hearing about it. But he has spent the last year or so spending a lot of time at the University of Washington with his son. He's been hanging out with players there. He's been talking to them. So understanding the dynamic there, I think probably won't be as much of an issue as some think, because also remember, when he's been the head coach of the NFL, he's had to deal with rookies who are fresh out of college that are just entering adulthood themselves. So he's had to deal with that, but this will be a little bit different. I wonder, you know, he said that he was kind of done with like the stupidity of the NFL. Well, boy, have I got news for you. College football is so much more stupid, and that's why we love it.
Yeah, go to college football where things make so much sense and aren't changing constantly and everybody knows what's happening. Yeah, that's an interesting comparison to make. Yeah, there's a little bit of stupidity in college football in 2024. Nothing stupid about this, though. Dan Mullen is headed back to the college game after 4 seasons away. He's clearly had a lot of success in his career, but what do you think of the fit at UNLV?
I like the hire. I've always been like a big fan of Dan Mullen because I think he's legitimately like a borderline genius when it comes to scheming and also evaluating talent and being able to get them on campus and develop them into big-time stars. Of course, the biggest example of that is Dak Prescott, who was a 3-star kid out of near Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he went and got him and turned him into a superstar at Mississippi State. The big question for me, though, with Dan Mullen is that the knock on him has always been he doesn't like recruiting, and then that kind of filters all the way down to his staff. But in this age with the transfer portal and obviously with NIL and revenue sharing coming up, does he fit more of a pro model? There's always been talk around Dan Mullen about maybe his next job would be in the NFL. Well, it's more like the NFL now, and he's going to UNLV, which is going to be pretty well prepared for this. Remember, the new house revenue sharing that's going to be implemented potentially July 1st, the group of 5 conferences do not have to abide by that. So a lot of them are probably not going to do revenue sharing. But UNLV has committed to Dan Mullen, according to my sourcing, that they will do some sort of revenue sharing. It won't be as large as the others, but they will do something there. In addition, I've also been told that the NIL situation there is supposed to more than double than what they were utilizing under Barry Odom. So we're talking multi-million dollars there, from my understanding. So they're setting that place up to be potentially the richest roster in the Mountain West and also challenge, obviously, other group of 5 schools. So with Dan Mullen having that with him, I think he's perfectly set up there to succeed. Plus, Barry Odom laid a great foundation there to unprecedented success for that program and getting to the Mountain West Championship in back-to-back seasons.
There's also a ton of opportunity in the new look Mountain West and, a pathway to the college football playoff. So good opportunity there. It seems like the theme of this coaching carousel outside of Bill Belichick was coming back home. And Rich Rod is one of those coaches going back to West Virginia after 7 seasons, 2 decades ago. What do you think of this reunion? How will it work?
Never thought I'd ever see it, but here we are. And Rich Rod took an interesting path back home, right? I mean, he left on bad terms. It was a messy exit when he left West Virginia to go to Michigan. That was a complete failure of a stint. And then he lands at Arizona, where he's kind of a roller coaster ride, but you saw the flashes of the old Rich Rod we saw, especially offensively at West Virginia. Gets fired there after a longer tenure, and then has to rebuild himself, right? Goes be's a coordinator at Louisiana Monroe, has some success there, then gets hired at Jacksonville State as a head coach, and in 3 short years, he wins a conference title at Conference USA. And remember, just a few years ago, Jacksonville State was an FCS program. So he's been able to show that, one, he built up West Virginia, and then decades later, he was able to build up Jacksonville State. This is a guy who has succeeded, he's failed, and then succeeded again, and now he gets a second chance on big-time college football at West Virginia. He's earned it, and his connections there will obviously be helpful. But again, things are so much different than they were 17 years ago when he left West Virginia. But I think the fan base there should be very excited because he hasn't forgotten how to win. He hasn't forgotten how to build up a program. And I think it's amazing that he was able to do it in this day and age at a place like Jacksonville State after everything else he's been through in his career.
Well, it hasn't been nearly as long for Scott Frost at UCF, but that marriage is back together. So what do you anticipate from him this time around?
Yeah, they had a short fling. It was 2 years, and one of those years was magical, right? They won a national championship. I hate saying that, but UCF fans would get mad at me if I don't mention that. They went undefeated in 2017. My question is, at Nebraska, obviously, he was a complete failure. Just absolute failure. One of the worst coaches we've seen in major college football at that time. And so the question is, was what happened at UCF those first 2 years his doing, or was that more or less what the groundwork was already laid in front of him and he just so happened to ride the wave and took that to going to his dream job at his alma mater at Nebraska? Having said that, Scott Frost is a good coach. You got to worry about some off-the-field stuff, his concentration on the job, but he's a man renewed. He's rejuvenated and an opportunity to prove himself once again. So what's that look like at UCF? The jury's out. We'll see. But again, his one elongated career path was at Nebraska, and no one would tell you that it was successful. In fact, they would tell you that there was no hope there during his time at Nebraska. And the only thing that people are pinning their hopes on at UCF is that he was there for 2 years and he had one big winning season, which was magical and great, but it was a 2-year stint. And that's not something that he necessarily built.
Brandon, I think that UCF fans are going to be more mad at you for using air quotes with their national championship than acknowledging it altogether. But thank you so much for breaking down